Hello and welcome to St Peter Mancroft. I'm Fiona Haworth, the Associate Priest. This is the last of our Advent reflections, which are live streamed and available on our YouTube channel. During Advent, we've been focusing on the four great themes associated with this season: death, judgment, heaven, and hell, using the lens of our planet home to shine a light on what we might learn through engaging with these difficult topics. This series has been inspired by our Gaia exhibition during October, when the beautiful spinning representation of the Earth floated above our choir as if it was made to be here. We have moved away from the fiery medieval images of hell which once adorned churches as a means of directing people's attention to the divine judgment that awaits us all. In the Church of St Thomas Salisbury, there is a restored medieval doom painting. It was painted above the chancel arch sometime between 1470 and 1500, and it depicts the Last Judgment. Christ is seated on a rainbow directly above the chancel arch. His feet rest on a second rainbow. Below him is the city of Jerusalem, and beneath his feet the 12 apostles. On either side of these figures are angels with trumpets summoning the naked dead from their graves to judgment. To the lower left-hand side of the painting, the dead rise from graves in a green garden like a burial ground. Some are assisted from their tombs by angels, and two groups of the dead, all naked, although one is apparently a bishop with a mitre on his head, are led up towards the kingdom of heaven. The right-hand side of the painting is very different. Here the devil is depicted with the head and feet of an animal, and demons lead groups of the chained dead towards the gaping mouth of hell, which is shown as a great dragon. Flames lick upwards from the bottom of the picture and from the dragon's mouth. Amongst the dead being herded into hell are two wearing crowns and one bearing a mitre. At the bottom of the painting, a scroll reads, "Nulla est redemptio." There is no escape for the wicked. For largely illiterate people, this horrifying image would have pressed home the terror of judgment and hell and shown that God is no respecter of rank and privilege. The only way to be sure of heaven was to lead a godly life. This and other fiery depictions of hell bear little resemblance to biblical texts that speak of hell. In the Hebrew scriptures, the place of the dead is known as Sheol. It is a place of dust and shadows where all the dead go, good and bad alike. Once in Sheol, the dead are cut off from God. It is the place of ultimate exile, from which there is no return to the promised land. However, when Jesus refers to hell, he most often refers to a geographical location that was irrevocably linked with a dark passage in Israel's history. Jesus speaks of Gehenna, a place where King Ahaz and King Manasseh burned their own sons as a sacrifice for Moloch. Jeremiah and Isaiah both speak of Gehenna as a place of slaughter, and when the Babylonians conquered Jerusalem, it was in Gehenna that the bodies of the dead were piled. Perhaps then, when Jesus spoke of hell, when he spoke of Gehenna, he was not speaking of eternal punishment, but of national judgment. The idea of judgment is bound up with the idea of hell, and thinking of Gehenna might open up new ways of thinking about hell for us. What are human beings doing that might expose us to the idea of judgment? Where might our Gehennas be? When Gaia was here in church, we ran a series of events to help us reflect on the climate emergency. The science of climate change is incontrovertible. Human activity is causing dangerous global heating that will have serious consequences for life on Earth. Not only is the impact of human activity on the climate now accepted, but we also know what we must do to address it. We must work to eliminate carbon emissions, stop our dependency on fossil fuels, reduce our consumption. Yet the political and commercial will to take the necessary action does not exist. The outcome of the COP26 conference was extremely disappointing. The voices of delegates from the 8 countries most affected by global heating were outnumbered by paid lobbyists from the coal and oil industries. A resolution to phase out fossil fuels was watered down at the last minute to phase down their use. This came after interventions from India and China, both heavily reliant on coal power. There was also a failure to agree a commitment to a financial package to address the loss and damage already incurred by nations experiencing climate change. When I think of hell, I think of the stories that have come from communities living with the consequences of our lifestyles in the wealthy West. I think of Madagascar, where a prolonged drought in the deep south of the island has left 1.3 million people struggling to find food and 28,000 facing starvation. It has been suggested that this is the world's first famine caused by climate change. One man, Mahosoa, who lives with one of his wives and 12 children, lost 4 of his youngest children at the start of the drought 3 years ago. He says, "They died of hunger in the village. They died one by one, day by day. We didn't eat for 1 week. Nothing to eat, nothing to drink." I cannot imagine the hell of parents forced to watch their children die, unable to help, unable to provide for them. When I think of hell, I think too of the women I met in Ethiopia, who told me of the way they have seen the climate change. The rains grow more erratic, the droughts increase in frequency, their animals dying, and their struggle to survive. The American farmer-poet Wendell Berry said that there are no sacred and unsacred places. There are only sacred places and desecrated places. He also described industrial humans as, "We are the ones who are undomesticated, barbarous, unrestrained, disorderly, extravagant, and out of control." What we have done, are doing to the earth, is turning it into a hell of our own making. If stories of hell are to mean anything, if they are to be useful, they should call us to action. They should call us to change. The medieval doom paintings laid out the consequences of failing to lead good and moral lives, and invited those seeing them to live in ways that would prepare them to enter the new heaven and the new earth that God has inaugurated in Jesus Christ. We stand on the brink of hell. We stand as if poised on the chancel arch in the medieval doom painting. To one side is the gaping maw of hell, a hell of increasingly violent storms, of floods and wildfires, of droughts and increasing desertification. To the other side are green and pleasant lands, of habitats restored, of clean rivers, of sustainably managed farmlands, of renewable energy. May we choose rightly and work with God for the renewal and redemption of God's beautiful, fragile world. Loving God, in this Advent season, help us to judge rightly and to live responsibly. Give humanity grace and courage to reverse the desecration we have brought to the earth, and to work instead for its restoration and flourishing, that all creatures may live in harmony and peace. We ask this through Jesus Christ. Amen.